go to strange and far lengths to gather the resources for the projects I make, trying to explore the origins of the things we use every day. Hiking mountains, trekking jungles, exploring abandoned caves and remote mineral sites, sometimes inevitably touching or even crossing some legal lines. 7 years ago, I smuggled this across an international border for one specific purpose that I doubt you're gonna guess. The statute of limitations has conveniently passed, so let's talk about it. For some context, we need to talk about elemental iodine and the technology and chemistry of early photography. My ongoing camera project has continuously been pushed to the back burner ever since I built a working camera body and my own camera lens, mostly because of the complexity of bootstrapping all the chemistry for the film itself. At its core, the origin of photography is really the harnessing of a light-sensitive chemical reaction. One of the key ingredients I've already gathered is silver. But silver is really only half of the crucial light-sensitive compound. The other half is a halide, usually chlorine, bromine, or iodine. All three can work. Chlorine is perhaps easiest to source, but silver chloride is relatively slow and less sensitive to light. Bromine became the dominant choice for most modern photographic film, but iodine may be the most practical option for me to produce myself. During the Napoleonic War, France needed enormous amounts of saltpeter for gunpowder production. One of the ingredients they used in this process was sodium carbonate, which at the time was often produced by burning kelp. While processing kelp ash, Bernard Cotta accidentally added excess sulfuric acid and noticed a violet vapor that later crystallized into a new substance, which ultimately led to the discovery of iodine. Today, iodine is best known as an additive to table salt, which serves as the crucial micronutrient used by the thyroid gland to produce hormones. Since the 1920s, iodinized salt has been one of the simplest and most effective public health interventions against iodine deficiency. In photography, iodine becomes useful because silver iodide is highly light sensitive. When light strikes a silver halide crystal, it excites electrons inside the crystal structure. These electrons reduce some of the silver ions into tiny specks of metallic silver, forming an invisible latent image. During the chemical development, these microscopic silver sites are amplified into the black image captured on the film. Combined with the camera obscura, this allows an image to be formed by light to be permanently recorded. Therein comes my need for a decent supply of seaweed from the ocean. Now for the potential crime. There's this claim that the average person commits 3 felonies a day without realizing it. I don't know how true that is, but I find myself in unique situations that in retrospect might have been considered a bit illegal. This channel doesn't make a ton of money, so when I travel somewhere for any other reason, I usually tack on some resource gathering for projects. In this case, I was traveling to Vancouver, Canada, where I would have an opportunity to collect this needed resource. There, I found a nice bay during low tide to collect a variety of different types of seaweed that should hopefully yield some iodine. Iodine is perhaps one of the more rare chemicals in the world, actually the least common of the halides. However, it exists in trace amounts dissolved in ocean water. Most seaweed in the ocean collects from these trace amounts and concentrates it, giving a usable source for iodine. Most seaweed has iodine, but not all plants are equal. Generally, brown kelps are going to be the best. From this area, the bulk of seaweed appears to be mostly bladderwrack, which is fairly high in iodine, so should give me a good result. After collecting, I crossed over the border, back into the US, neglecting to disclose my smuggled goods. On the US side, I dried them out in the sun before flying them back home. Thank you to today's sponsor, Incogni, for sponsoring this video. Your address, phone number, relatives, and even your spending habits are being quietly collected, bought, and sold by something called data brokers. There are hundreds of these companies. They scrape together everything from public record to online shopping data, then package it and sell it to advertisers, and sometimes the people you really don't want having your info. Personally, I find that I keep getting more and more spam calls every day, so it's really nice to know that Incogni can be out there scrubbing my data and hopefully bringing that number down. And the scary part, you never agree to it. That's where Incogni comes in. It's basically a cleanup crew for your digital footprint. Incogni automatically contacts hundreds of data brokers to get your personal info taken down and keeps doing it when it reappears. And with their custom removal feature, you can even send them direct links to sites exposing your data, and their team will handle it for you. It's the easiest way to take back your privacy, stay off people's search sites, and reduce your risk of scams and identity theft. So if you want to protect your privacy, reduce the risk of scams or identity theft, and just not be an open book to the entire internet, check out Incogni at incogni.com/everything. Get 60% off an annual plan with my link. So what laws did I break? Well, I had some nervousness about basically every step and potentially committing some crime I didn't even know of. But looking through everything in retrospect, it was likely a lot more legal than I expected. Harvesting seaweed in general is legal in Canada as long as it's under 100 kilograms. The exact location I harvested from, I'm less certain about the legality. Flying seaweed back home domestically in the US is mostly fine, although there are some restrictions for places where they're worried about invasive species. But that's not where I was going. The only major issue is that seaweed would likely be considered an agricultural product, and I did not disclose it at the border, which could have been a problem had I gotten caught. Most likely it would have just been confiscated, but there potentially could have been a pretty major fine. I don't know if they go back and hunt if you confess it in a video. But regardless, in this case, procrastination might have saved me from any potential legal issues, as pretty much every potential crime or civil fee would have a 5-year statute of limitations. So hopefully I'm clear. The legal experts that are the comment section, of course, will disagree, and already have lots of opinions about the countless felonies I've most certainly committed in other projects. Anyways, let's burn the evidence, and as always, everything shown here is for dramatic effect and should not be interpreted as a perfectly factual recreation of all real events. Now to extract the actual iodine we're after. A big reason for the delay in this project was the difficulty in producing the chemicals needed for extracting it. Sulfuric acid proved to be a challenge, requiring a side quest to make saltpeter from chicken droppings, and then burning that with sulfur that I collected in Death Valley to produce a reasonable amount of sulfuric acid. But also needed is an oxidizer, which can be perhaps easiestly achieved with electrolysis. Making actual electricity from scratch and making batteries actually powerful enough has been an ongoing challenge, which I would say I've only recently achieved a battery bank of usable consistent power. From that we can do electrolysis on a brine solution to produce chlorine gas as an oxidizer. The same process can be run and allowed to react with itself to produce bleach, which we can also use as an oxidizer in this process. The process of extracting iodine is basically pretty similar to how it was first discovered. First up, burning all of the seaweed down into ashes. Then soak it in warm water to dissolve the iodine salts. Next we acidify it with the sulfuric acid. This will help prevent the iodine from reverting back into the salts after we do the next step. After this, then we do the oxidization with the addition of chlorine gas. I first tried with the electrolysis to push chlorine gas into it, but it did not yield a large amount, only got a small reaction on the surface. So then I switched to using bleach, which should do basically the same reaction, which is effectively removing an electron from the iodide ion, forcing it to form elemental iodine. From that, we get a nice dark brown solution of iodine. From here, I tried to evaporate and crystallize a portion of this to better isolate it, but I ended up starting to lose some of the iodine. So I'm going to stop at this point until I decide which way I want to take with my entirely from scratch photo. If I do a daguerreotype, I need the actual iodine crystals, but later formats like ambrotypes and tintypes will have me first turning it back into potassium salt. My expected yield from my seaweed is about 3 grams, which despite the large amounts of water appears to be pretty accurate. 3 grams is a very small amount, but actually plenty for my photographic needs. the amount should give me around 100 photographs, assuming I don't lose all the iodine before it makes it to the actual film. So with this iodine now, it opens the door for a few different ways I can do it. Basically, all of the early forms of photography use iodine. So I can do a few different methods, and my intention is to explore all of them. So with the silver and the nitric acid, and now the iodine, it should give me everything to make the actual photosensitive parts. There's gonna be a few more chemicals I need to figure out how to make for the actual developing of it, depending on which direction I go, and I think there's a few options. Definitely satisfying to go back and finish up this loose end of something I've been meaning to do for a while, and get back to this photography project that's been dragging on a little too long. My goal is to hopefully get this camera done by the end of this year and get some photos taken. So thank you for everybody who's been here for the whole journey, and thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out other content we have covering a wide variety of topics. Also, if you've enjoyed these series, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are largely a fan-funded channel and depend on the support of our viewers in order to keep our series going. Thanks for watching.